All right, I think we're live.
Seems like it.
That's good. Let's see if janky internet connections prevail tonight. Hopefully not.
Yeah, I don't know. Looks like maybe it's okay.
0% drop frames right now. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it
Can
looks
only
like
go up from there.
ain't that the truth.
Yeah. All right.
Ain't
Well,
that the truth.
regardless, it looks okay for now. Um,
Give it time.
yeah, give it
Give it
time.
time.
Everything just takes time.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it's good to be back streaming at our kind of regular time again. Last week we were actually at around this time recording an episode of the podcast, so that's where the stream was. So that I think that episode of the podcast was just released, I believe, yesterday. Am I right, Eric?
Yeah, no, it went live yesterday. Let's see. It's been downloaded 67 times, everybody. We're really big.
That's pretty good. Oh yeah, so this episode we were joined by Green Stuff Gretchen on Instagram and other like platforms, and we were talking about mental health and just mental health in general, and also how it can affect the like wargaming miniature community. So, I guess this is just like a small way of touching on some of those various topics that I think,
Serve more talking and
yeah, because I feel a lot of these
more
things,
interest in and
while they
outreach from
don't
people.
necessarily come up that often, they certainly should, because I think a lot of that stuff affects people on a daily basis. So
Yeah, no, I think it was a good chat. And
yeah,
hopefully we can do more with Gretchen in the future and just do more with mental health to try to, raise awareness of it being a major component of people's lives and that the healthcare systems and support networks and all that stuff can and need to be better.
yeah, because at least talking with Gretchen, the those in the United Kingdom aren't really a whole lot better than, or they are ripe with lots of
No.
problems like they are here in the United States. So
Hey, it's Nacho Shack. Hey, Nacho.
hopefully you're enjoying Halo. Are people excited about the new Halo? It's a TV show, right? It's coming out.
I know
Wait, a
nothing
TV
about
show
that.
about what?
Halo.
Oh. Hmm.
Pretty sure that's happening.
Yeah, I don't know anything about
I
that.
don't either.
But
I'm
it was
excited.
it
Just
was
to learn
cool
about it
having
now, and I'm excited.
yeah, okay. I like the little piece of artwork you illustrated for the podcast, Adam.
No, yeah, that was, I think, sometime after recording the podcast, the three of us were talking about the notion that maybe at least for some of our podcasts, depending on what they are, I could try and do some artwork to sort of promote them a little more. And so for this episode, since we were talking with Green Stuff Gretchen, I decided I could try and draw a little piece of artwork that kind of depicts our mascot, the little bionic frog bishop, and a little Gretchen of sorts, and they'd be holding different things used for sculpting. So this, I don't think I'm not quite finished with it, but this is something I've been working on, and I've been using. I guess this is actually the second piece of digital artwork that I've really worked on. So all of this I've been illustrating on an iPad.
That's cool with one of the Apple pencils
Yeah, and
and stuff.
the program Procreate. And it seems pretty intuitive. It's at least I find it is a lot easier to work with than the little dabbling that I've done in like Illustrator and Photoshop.
Okay.
Though mind you, I haven't really spent that much time with them, but this is very easy to work with and pretty user friendly, and relatively quickly I got to a form where I could kind of just be sketching or drawing out things that was at least similar to what I would do on like a piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah, but it's good and it's kind of, exciting branching out into new things. Like, I mean, it likely was like a slower process than
Yeah, I mean
what.
it's certainly very different, and I feel in some sense you have almost like a lot more control than you would on like another piece of physical media, in that every line that you draw, like you can like, I don't like the look of that, and you can just go back and slightly tweak it and modify it without the fear of, say, destroying the physical media, the paper or whatnot that you're drawing on. And the fact that you can like zoom in and zoom out also kind of
Mhm.
gives it a much different feel to it. And I guess on top of that, you can work in layers where you can successively add more and more layers, where such that if you're working on one, you're not affecting everything underneath it, or like vice
Mhm.
versa. And that I feel can make certain aspects of things a lot easier. But then again, since you do have more control over some of that line work, I sort of felt like I spent a lot of time going back and forth, doing and redoing like one little area, and then still not really be that satisfied with it, and then just move on to something else. And um, I think it works pretty well to like color images and stuff, though I think at this point they have lots of different like brush types to give you like different effects and whatnot, but like I can't say I've really found something that I think.
But yeah, he flips the torch and he can like command other warriors as his own.
Hey, I might be back. Doesn't seem like my camera's working anymore. Can people hear me?
You're
Yeah.
back. You're back. Your camera isn't working.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like my internet connection just completely took a dive.
Okay. Well, it seems like we're back and maybe
Yeah.
it looks good on screen.
Yeah, it does look nice.
Or
Okay, well, we'll see. Hopefully, it doesn't take a dive again.
yeah, I mean, because it came up with like that the stream was kind of broken with the like
Hmm.
hands in his face or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, okay.
But I guess I kind of don't. I guess we were maybe talking about Procreate, but maybe it's not super critical. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I'm glad we were able to record this episode on mental health, and hopefully, it allows for more discussions in the future and encourages discussion, but amongst listeners and things of that nature.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm also hoping that it is perhaps an episode that will be maybe more listened to than some of the others, and something that people could potentially find, not just
Mm-hmm.
because they were coming to it because they know the stuff that we do.
Yeah, that would be nice.
But
We'll see, and I mean, I feel we can keep pushing. Um, sort of
yeah, I think we should
this.
mention it in a bunch of our streams for at least a little while going
That makes
forward.
sense. And I
Why
Yeah,
guess,
not?
and I encourage people to reach out to us as well
hmm,
if if they have thoughts on it or whatnot.
yeah. So I guess there are a bunch of things we could talk about tonight. I know there are a bunch of different Kickstarters that are going on that I think are kind of relevant to some to people's interests, our interests. Um, I guess maybe the first one we could mention. There's a Andrew Ray has a new Kickstarter up for his statuesque miniatures, and in this case, it's one where he's providing digital or STL files for a range of his like female heads that he's sculpted, which I think this is nice. Like I think he's been kind of in the business of like making and casting female heads for different miniatures for I think around maybe even like 10 years. And so we've certainly used a bunch of similar heads and stuff on some of our models. In this case, most of them were cast out of like a white metal. But now, kind of with the increasing popularity of like 3D printing and stuff like that, this is just a way for people who have those capabilities. They can print their own heads and such, and it's a whole range of like different hairstyles, like neck types and like joints and stuff like that. So I think this is
Yeah.
a good opportunity if you're interested in stuff like that. And
He has
um
some nice photos of kind of how it fits with various models and such. And I don't know, I feel he's well known kind of in the community as someone who's created like good looking female heads for a long time, but when GW was pretty lacking on it in it for a long while, which it's
mhm.
started to get a little bit better. But it's nice to see that these are, I think, improved versions of stuff he may have already been selling and such, but then giving you the opportunity to print them yourselves if you have a printer. And I really like the focus on that there are different neck designs that
Mhm.
he does a lot to ensure and like suggesting that you drill out a place for the neck and such, and just that he has a concern about ensuring that the models have a neck,
Yeah, I mean
which
that's really good because there are a number of different miniature companies, Games Workshop included, where based on how the stuff's made, a lot of the models don't really look like they have necks, which is isn't good.
yeah.
So here's
Yeah.
a question for you. I didn't read the Kickstarter page or anything. This is probably his first foray into I mean, he's probably been doing 3D printing to like experiment with his digital sculpts and stuff, but has he ever like sold any stuff that he's 3D printed or something? Presumably none of the old female head designs were available as 3D printed.
No, I don't think he's sold any.
I know he hasn't sold the digital files, but perhaps some of the stuff I guess I don't know how long he's been doing the 3D printing. Somewhere he said in one of his posts the printer that he has, which it would be interesting to see what it is and get a sense of what that costs.
Mm-hmm.
In that, I mean, from those pictures, they look like the prints are pretty nice. But I
Yeah,
bet
because I mean he's
it's
been
expensive.
doing 3D sculpting for a while now.
I think he said some. Oh wait. Although I switched to digital sculpting 10 years ago, this is my first STL release. As such, I have no idea how well these heads will sell. I also want to keep refining the supports, but I need to know I can afford to allocate my time doing that. So yeah, I think this is just kind of his first venture into like selling stuff like
Also,
this.
does this mean that so he's still perhaps perfecting these files, like figuring out like the support system and stuff? That do you think like as he modifies them, like he'll provide you with the newer files? Well, some all supplied rewards are for personal use. Don't share.
I could see it wouldn't surprise me if he um
Yeah.
would update them or if he makes.
We see this is the thing that um the notion of selling these printer files and it's just under good faith that you're not gonna then
Yeah.
first off distribute them to people, and even if you're not distributing the files to people, you could be printing this stuff for people and selling it to people.
Yeah, I mean, he
um
has some notes saying, like, you must not share the files, you must not sell them, you must not share or sell modified versions of the files, and all along those lines. So, yeah, there is a lot of this. There is, like, a lot of good faith in.
because the whole notion reminds me of that this the gentleman from I think Poland who does all that really sketchy black art, like black lined art, um, of Rogue Trader stuff, and is
Hmm.
angry at
Yeah.
seemingly everybody. I have sent some messages or responded to some of his stuff on Instagram over the past, and he said something about how back a few years ago he had wanted to buy a print of one of GW's like artwork that GW had, because I guess for a while, and maybe they still are, were selling prints. And
They
he
have.
was saying he wished that they would just sell like a high quality file for printing, which
Yeah.
in some extent I get that because um, shipping a nice print could be expensive or it could be
Yeah.
messed up. But I also see like why would Games Workshop want to sell the printing files when then somebody could just go and print out as many as they wanted and sell them?
Yeah.
Like I don't think they would ever do that
No, they're not
because of
gonna.
stuff like
I
that.
feel for STL
And
files.
this reminds me a little bit of that
Well, I feel STL
notion.
files. This is kind of common practice that people
Hmm.
are like, oh, I put the stuff up on. I mean, this might not be the like Thinkverse or I don't know. There are various things um, that you can put stuff up on and sell them and whatnot.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this is still, I'm not gonna say new anymore because it's been going on for a while, but I think like a lot of how things are done are still kind of being worked out, at least in some degree. And Andrew, for instance, he, I think, is still trying to figure out some of that and kind of get a sense on the viability of some of it and like kind of what he needs to do going forward to like say make this work or to then do similar things in the future.
Cause like Paul Friedrich von Bargen, he's part of the 28 team, and he started to do 3D sculpting and such. He has done a bunch of designs of space, like more true scale space marines and different armor variants and such. And he has them that you can buy on
Mm-hmm.
what's the site? Cults 3D, and you can buy files and such of it. And I don't know how. Uh, I don't know much about the platform and whatnot, but so
Yeah.
it's a similar thing. So presumably Andrew could have done a similar thing, although part of it is probably you can somewhat imagine that if he would put it up on something and sold them for a similar cost or whatever, it might just be like screaming into the void and like get no,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get no real feedback or no. So I feel Kickstarter is a way to sort of promote it and like generate excitement around it, which I
Mm-hmm.
think makes sense.
Also, as he said at the bottom there, like if it does well, he'll look into using that to move towards potentially selling printed versions of the things. Or at least I think he said some of that. Something towards that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Which that is if I were interested in getting these, that's what I would want because I don't get a 3D printer.
Oh, so he
Just
mentions
another.
that he must have printed those, at least some of them, on like a Frozen Sonic mini 4K printer,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that's what Lunax 7070 has,
Mm-hmm.
or a similar, very similar. It's like a Frozen of that sort. So they're only like $350. I mean, I say only, but like that.
I mean, that's a lot of money, but that's not like $1,500 or something. Which I wouldn't have been surprised if it was something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like I feel fairly like it's not super expensive. I mean, I guess a bottle of the 3D resin is like $40, and I have no sense of like how quickly.
Yeah.
But still, at like a 300 some dollar price point, that's a price point that like a hobbyist could get into it. Because thinking about that, it costs $300 to get a Switch, a Nintendo Switch, and then you have
Yeah,
to buy a $60 game, and you probably
Mm-hmm.
have to buy some sort of memory card to. So, like, if you want to play the new Pokemon game, you don't have a Switch, you're
yeah,
probably gonna spend $450.
and
Mm-hmm.
like what? How much did the new Kill Team cost?
A
Like
lot.
$200. Yeah, 100 and so regard like it is certainly obtainable. And I think at this point, because good quality printers like the Frozen are available, I think this is more makes more sense. Like, because honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if like Fummelfinger or Paul Friedrich von Bergen, he's probably also using a Frozen.
Mm-hmm.
um, so there are a lot of options, and it's a fairly competitive space.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh,
Well,
and like
regardless.
honestly, it seems like something that I'm kind of interested in it in like 3D printing. The only thing though, it's like just it's like another hobby in itself because there's so much there's so much time people spend with like adjusting like where do you put in the supports, like the print time, cure times, like just
Hmm.
tons of stuff that you have to do. And then, they take up space. I think often the resin smells pretty bad and it should be vented and such. So like I don't know. It's like
Yeah, I sort
there's
of
always
feel
something.
if I verge into like doing 3D sculpting and such, then that would be the time we might look
Yeah,
into it.
that makes sense. Which you
Evening
should
day.
verge into, Adam.
I should. I should. But yeah, so if you're interested in 3D printing stuff and having some nice like female heads to add to a whole range of different models, um, this is a good place to look.
Nah, yeah, I think it's cool. I guess before we go on to, or I mean, I guess there are other Kickstarters and stuff we could bring up, but before we forget, we could mention that um 28 magazine, they released the winners for the female space marine challenge, and there was a nice video with Alex Winberry, who's like kind of the chief creative lead of 28, talking with Arbiter Ian, who he has a YouTube channel that makes nice videos, a lot of which are kind of almost like talking about older GW products and sort of describing like what's the deal here or
Hmm.
whatnot, describing like kind of the Horus Heresy or what happened in the Bad Ab War and stuff like that. Um, but there's a nice video, uh, talking about the challenge and some of the winners and such. And I would certainly encourage people to go and watch it if they have not, and give him a follow.
Yeah.
Arbiter Ian and Supervised Darkness. But so it's like I guess I watched the video like shortly after it came out, and I haven't really gone back since. I wonder if it's turned into a shit show. You know
Like,
what I
as
mean?
in people commenting and saying dumb shit.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like maybe he's had stuff kind of about like he had a previous video of female space marines and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like I wonder did how that did. It has 400 comments.
That's a lot. That's a lot. That's so
Um
many.
I'm sure there'll be some upset people, but it looks like there are a lot of good comments.
I mean, you're never gonna please everybody.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess we could talk a little bit about kind of hobby stuff we've been working on. We touched on it a little bit.
Y'all want to talk about all the other Kickstarters first?
I guess we should do that. I'm not sure I know what all of them are. I know there's
This is one we. What about that Ian Miller miniatures Kickstarter?
Did that
Oh,
start yet?
yeah, it's almost over. It's over in a day.
Oh.
I just linked it.
Yeah, but there are Kickstarters all over the place.
Yeah. These miniatures, I for the Ian Miller look pretty good. Yeah, osmotic meld is what it's called.
Are they all sculpted by the same person?
I didn't read. um, I think they are.
And are they Yeah, I feel I remember you kind of mentioning it, but didn't look at it much. Oh, they look quite nice.
Yeah, they look good.
It's one
But then I
sculptor.
wondered, do you think these are resin models?
Nah, they're metal.
Metal?
Because they're
Okay.
trying to be kind of still along the old Hammer vibes, which is neat.
Or I'm pretty certain they're metal.
Yeah, I think they are.
They're pretty cool. Particularly the stranger, or I don't know what they call him. The guy with the rifle who's stalking forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Rusty. Or no, Rusty's the dog he's with.
Yeah, so they're fun.
Yeah, so the sculptor, John Robertson, been professionally working in miniature gaming industry since 1988, operated in some management and creative roles. Currently, he's a full-time sculptor of models for in the war games market. Keen wargamer, playing historical games mostly. Um, he likes French graphic novels, like stuff by Mobius.
Who doesn't?
Okay. Yeah. And okay, so he has a company called Myriad Miniatures. And when you go to the shop, there's nothing in it. So maybe this was just built about for his Kickstarter.
Yeah, well, these
Um,
are cool. I'm not sure I need more models right now, though.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I would rather just wait until they're released more fully and then order just a few of them.
Yeah.
but his models of like the interesting fish cavalry stuff, like they look like pretty good representations
Yeah,
of Miller's artwork.
which is impressive to kind of achieve that because the artwork is very sort of detailed.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it looks like for backing it, like he's selling like all the on foot models in one set for like
50 pounds, I
50
think.
pounds, and then the other, like the mounted stuff, in another set for presumably a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, they're cool. I guess we can talk about
There's another Forbidden Psalm
the Last
standalone
War.
thing.
Yeah. It's like a standalone expansion.
So it is it by the writer of the original Forbidden Psalm? Probably.
I'm not,
Um,
I think so. I would have to see who it is, but Kevin Raman, I think, is the person's name. I don't know if you can. Yeah, it's the same person. He's created three. So I think it's kind of using similar rules to like the miniature rules to Forbidden Psalm,
mhm.
which is Morkborg, like a miniature game set in
Mhm.
that universe. And for that matter, the original Forbidden Psalm, I actually was in a podcast about that with Alex Winbury as well for 28's podcast 32. So that's something people could listen to if they have not.
So one thing I was at games and stuff, the one gaming shop in Maryland, and they had Forbidden Psalm
Mhm.
copies of the book in stock. I was
That's
impressed.
cool.
But
Yeah,
yeah, so
that
I think if you're interested in some of that stuff and like other miniature agnostic like rule sets and stuff, certainly something to look into.
so this brings up somewhat of, or is it about World War One?
I
It,
think it's a World War One like setting.
yeah, I think it. Yeah, I mean the.
Also, this brings up an interesting topic that Eric and I were talking about 2 weekends ago or something, about how we're not super interested in rule sets and in general even miniature games. And that when thinking back to all of the Games Workshop games that really had an impression on us, it was mainly things for like the settings, like
Mm-hmm.
Mordheim, even though we never played it, had a pretty big place in our hearts because of the imagery, the atmosphere. Inquisitor, in the same
Yeah.
vein. Warhammer in general, like Warhammer 40,000 in general
Mhm.
too, but we kind of played it, but not really. And one thing that never excites me too much about this now, it seems like there's a constant stream of miniature agnostic wargame rules that are coming out that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, most of the time, I'm not super excited about it because I don't care about playing a game. And I mean, I'm sure some of them are good, and there is something satisfying to like holding and reading like what feels
Mm-hmm.
like a good, concise, like clever system. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
something that I do find appealing in that, but ultimately, like I'm not super interested in finding the great rule set to play a miniatures game, particularly if it's largely just a rule set that you could apply to whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
I want an interesting story, an interesting backdrop, and in that vein, that's one of the things that makes Morkborg, the RPG, great, is that the best part about it wasn't the game. But I mean, the game's pretty good in that it is very simple, but like doesn't feel trivial. But it's that the world that it created that appeals to me most.
Yeah, certainly.
I feel that world is what makes you kind of excited to be involved and invest yourself into it and create interesting things. And yeah, Greg, kind of like you mentioned, we had talked about it that, yeah, like this stuff, the only reason like we're even doing, have a blog, streaming, podcast, that stuff is because we were kind of like captured by some of Games Workshop settings and
Mm-hmm.
things like Inquisitor, Mordheim, things like that, that those settings, yeah, captured our imagination and wanted us to sort of stay there and do things with it. Um,
Yeah.
and like we hadn't don't play almost ever. Like that's so well, I mean, I like reading rules. I kind of like thinking about some of the how rule systems mesh together and work. Like it kind of fascinates me, but it's not enough to actually play games with.
Yeah.
And certainly not enough to like that would drive my long
Mm-hmm.
lasting interest. So, and like you said, Greg, certain like there's a plethora of small scale skirmish games that
Yeah.
I'm sure, but they don't that excited about them. We even stuff like Frostgrave, like we even played a little of that and it seemed pretty good, and Stargrave and whatnot. 'Cause I'm sure they're good systems, but like nothing about that excites me. But in some sense, even though they're not miniature they're not supposed to be like non-settings. I think
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of at least couched a little bit as games that like you could easily make your Necromunda warband or your Inquisitor warband and just use
Mm-hmm.
uh, some of those rule sets. But having all this said, like I could see something like this last war being something that could actually draw you in and want to do something with,
Mm-hmm.
which in some sense probably same thing with like Turn Up 28 since it's so weird and stylized. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's something
You'd
there
be
that I could see
interested
people
in
getting sucked into and wanting.
dwelling. Yeah, like Turn Up 28 looks cool, but
Yeah.
mainly the imagery and the idea associated with it is what makes it look
Yeah, I have
cool.
no idea what the rules are
I mean,
like.
and maybe the rules are good too. That would just be a plus.
I
Um,
sort of feel like if we ever got to a place where we were playing in more events and playing more games, it might be something where I would be interested in exploring a bunch of different rule sets a little more closely and then
To find
figuring
something that
out,
I actually like
yeah,
playing.
figuring out one that I think is best suited or merging several different systems into something
Yeah.
that could
Yeah,
we
yeah.
could use for like most of the stuff. But those opportunities to play the games are often pretty few and far between.
Nah, it's true. And then I feel COVID like really
That put a
made things
hamper
hard.
on just about everything.
Yeah.
um, yeah. So I guess I think we should touch, or I guess, are there other Kickstarters we want to talk about? Like, I don't remember.
Oh, there's the Vignette 28 Kickstarter.
Oh, shit. Uh,
That I guess Vignette 28.
Actually, before we touch on that, one thing that it just occurred to me, maybe it would be cool to play this last War Forbidden Psalm thing with um some of those osmotic meld
Yeah.
miniatures and
Yeah.
have like some skirmish thing where you have that interesting little wanderer with his little robo dog and like that actually sounds cool to me.
yeah.
Trying to explore some games with that stuff, perhaps using the last war. But yeah.
But yeah, Vignette 28, I think they already had a volume
I was
earlier.
trying to find.
Let me see if I can find it.
I try. Maybe I'm spelling vignette 28 wrong.
I'll put it in. Well, I'll actually just put it in the chat for like this stream. I don't know if you can get
I can
that.
click on that. I don't know why it didn't find that. So what's our understanding of what this actually is? It's kind of a
Before, so the first volume, Vignette 28, I mean, for lack of a better term, seemed a lot like it is a 28 magazine, but just photos,
yeah,
if that
okay.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Like the idea of, I think the concept of Vignette 28, the idea of trying to take photographs of miniatures in very evocative ways with settings and whatnot. So the first volume, I think it's free, and you might be able to find it on Creative, is that what it's called? 28 Creatives,
Mm-hmm.
which is a thing, like another website that isn't specifically, I think, a part of Vignette 28, but they're kind of maybe working together to some extent. But yeah, so it's like a photo book where the first volume, I don't know, maybe uh Julian Wild, perhaps he asked people if they would be interested and send photos, because there's some good stuff in the first volume. Like I think Anna's in it,
Mm-hmm.
Colonel, some of those things, and some nice photos. But it seems like this is a way to like kind of fund a second volume in which you can also like get a printed copy and such. I think
Yeah.
the most interesting thing about it, though, is that you can back it in a way just to get a printed version, but like you can also essentially pay to be a part of the magazine. Like you pay some amount of money and then you're like kind of offered a spot in the magazine.
Yeah, it's not even a lot.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, like you can pay
four
what you want.
dollars.
So I suppose it has something to do with it. It's like I suspect that he wants it to be something that lots of people can get excited about and spread like kind of the love of the sort of 28
Mm-hmm.
style of things. And like he doesn't, I suspect he doesn't want it to be like pay your way into the issue. Like so he
Yeah,
didn't want to
yeah.
make it such that like if you pay £100 you can be in it. Like I
Yeah.
think it's just a way to uh I don't know, maybe cut out some people who aren't actually committed to it, perhaps. I don't know. Ultimately, it's a very interesting style
Mm-hmm.
to go about this. But like I'll be interested to see where it goes. And like yeah, the first volume I'm pretty sure you can download, or I mean I downloaded it before. Maybe it was on 28 Creatives. Um but I think it's pretty neat. And we'll see like cuz how many people have backed? Like at least 12 people backed for the contribution thing. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, on 28 Creatives, there's a download section where you can download the first volume of the photo book.
Oh, and I guess towards that end, he has an article in the fourth volume of 28 as well,
Mm-hmm.
talking about kind of how he does his photography and whatnot. So that's cool too. So if you're kind of interested in the person who's sort of behind this concept and whatnot, you can kind of see some of his artwork and sense of the models he's painted, but also kind of made little vignettes and scenes and whatnot through post processing and things of that nature. So yeah, ultimately, hope to wish the best for it. And the
Mm-hmm.
only thing I could see some people being a little confused about it. But I think there's always going to be somewhat like that. And it seems like he described it pretty well in the thing. But I could see some people like, what, you have to pay to be a part of this type thing being perhaps a little off putting. But
Yeah, I mean
It
looking at
is a
that
little
it's
it
not
is a
really
little off-putting.
expensive, it seems
It is a
fine.
little off-putting, but in some sense, yeah, maybe it's just such that, like it's vaguely limiting the
Yeah.
amount that people are putting in, but not in much like
Because I think he had
a
said
real hindering
in the
way.
campaign that like the hope is to have like upwards to like 40, I'm just going to say articles, although I think it's not articles as much as photos and stuff. But in the first issue, there was some text.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little, like, each one of the pictures, and like, I've been scrolling through each of the pictures and such, there's some text saying who it's from. Sometimes there's, like, a title of it or a short description to kind of add to the photo. But, like, I think it's certainly cool, and I think you could pretty easily just page through it and kind of get ideas of things to do. Like, it's kind of neat. Like, we've certainly spent a lot of time converting and painting models, and like, you could probably combine them with some like minor terrain elements and with some like editing and stuff to make some really cool like scenes and such.
Yeah.
Eric, this is going back to the idea of using the osmotic mailed miniatures to play the Forbidden Psalm thing. And all of our games could be in the Bone Tree Forests. Could be fucking sick. Could be
Yeah, it's
fucking
true.
sick.
Okay, so
I did paint all that
the
stuff.
first volume was like 68 pages.
Okay.
Seems they have a timeline here that campaign ends after 30 days. End of May, 3 months after the campaign is the deadline for all contributors to send their stuff, details, descriptions, things of that nature. End of June, kind of final reviews, layouts, test prints. July, reworks. September, like kind of the orders are in, ready to. So ultimately, by December of this year is the thought that it'll be shipped out. So it seems there are slots for up to 80 contributors. Yeah, so pretty interesting. I don't know. We'll have to think about it ourselves. I don't know. Is this something that we are interested in?
I mean, the only thing I could see it with some of this stuff could be kind of a way of pushing us out of like what we're typically do. Like, Eric, I could see you could pretty easily set up and take some cool like black and white photos of things. Like, we could certainly do things, and like the more that I get into like digital art and stuff like that, I think we could also do stuff with those photos. But it's just another thing to think about and work on, and who knows if we'll actually go there, but it's something to look into and think about.
Yeah. Yeah. But so anyone, if you see it, consider it, I guess.
Yeah.
Shit. Looking further into the osmotic mailed Kickstarter, one of the models he's working on is like some jack-o'-lantern tree golem thing.
It's cool.
That looks neat.
It is cool. Okay, so I think we've talked enough about different interesting Kickstarters and such. In terms of hobby stuff that we've been working on, so I think at the start of the screen I talked a little bit about the digital piece of art that I'm working on to go along with our most recent episode of our podcast focusing around mental health we did with Green Stuff Gretchen. So yeah, I've been working on that, kind of figuring out how to use the iPad or an iPad. And then that's not all. I did other things too, surprisingly. I painted two more little hoodie crows from Andrew Ray's like left at the bottom of the garden series of models. And these, like some of the other ones I painted, like the little toy Robin and whatnot, are really a joy to paint. They're small single piece models, and since they have like kind of like a lot of open space on them, they really, if you're interested in it anyway, can really give you an opportunity to do a lot of texture work and experimenting with things of that nature. So particularly on these little crows, I spent a bit of time trying to modulate the grays and blacks to kind of give a sense of like feathers and such. So I quite like that. And then I added a little bit of like a shine to their beaks such that they look a little different.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they were a fun thing to paint, and I sort of feel like maybe throughout the year, depending on how things are going, I could sort of see myself painting some more of Andrew's little sculpts and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a picture of the two little crows with the little ghost that I painted earlier.
Nah, yeah, they look great.
Oh, hey,
Like
Meandering Shade.
the
Yeah.
feathers and stuff you painted in are great.
Yeah, so I dabbled a little bit in digital art, but didn't really do much in a big way. And I can't really say I'm doing anything in a big way now, but since the start of the year, I've been trying to use it a little more and actually see what I can do with it. And so far I've been pretty happy with it, and it certainly, I think, could result in a whole bunch of new opportunities, and at least new ways to kind of explore the different, like the hobby space in general, and play around with, say, some of the characters and stuff that we've worked on and think about. So yeah, it's been fun, and I think I would like to think that throughout the coming year I will do more and more of it, and we'll see, maybe to go along with several of our podcasts and such, maybe I will try and do more artwork depending on what the topic of the issue is or like who we're chatting with. I think it would be a good opportunity to encourage me to draw a little more. But yeah, so that and the little hoodie crows, that's where I focused my attention, and I guess now I will probably get back to actually converting and sculpting models again. I feel I have a lot of things in the works and a lot of models that I know I need to make, or at least want to make, so that is where I think I need to focus my attention for a little while.
Yeah.
Also, one thing with the little hoodie crows, I kind of have the sense that I would like to try and get more varying types of like basing materials, grasses, mosses, ferns, and other stuff like that, and experiment more with them. I think the biggest thing about that is I've certainly purchased a bunch in the past, and finding it's hard to know what to get, I guess, is how I'll put it. Like, I know I've purchased a bunch of different grasses and tufts and whatnot, and I feel a lot of them aren't quite to my liking, I guess that's how I'll put it. Or they're hard to use, or they don't look as nice as, say, I would want them to look. So that's something that I think I would like to experiment around a little bit more. And I guess, unfortunately, that probably just means I'll have to buy a whole bunch of stuff and figure out what I think works. But if I do figure out stuff like that, I will certainly talk about it here and on the blog. So I think of all the stuff, the little grassy moss pads from Minotaur are, I think, the nicest of any of the stuff that I've worked with.
No, I agree with that. I feel by a large margin they are better.
Yeah, and so I think I need to look into more of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Is the internet struggling again? Looks kind of, maybe not, but it doesn't look as smooth as it had been.
We're now up to like 4.7% dropped frames, so I think it may be
Okay,
slowly deteriorating.
yeah, because I feel your voice cuts out at times.
Yeah, see, it's interesting on my end. Like, I don't necessarily hear anything, and I think it often changes, or it takes a while for me to realize things are as bad as they are. You're talking about like Minotaur, like I have a hell of a time figuring out. Let me see if I can find it. I think, Eric, we were talking about this recently, and I think I had figured out what the company was called. Can we find it? And like the name is like not distinctive enough that for sure
Wasn't it like almost like Minotaur, but then it's like almost like mini nature or something was in it or something.
yeah, something like that. Gosh.
Yeah,
Actually,
it's
what we
hard
talking
to
about? I'm
find.
sorry, I was not here.
Hmm.
Oh wait. It might be, let's see if the little grassy moss pads.
Oh. Oh.
Finding, oh, I think this is it. No, yeah, Meandering Shade has a good point. Actually using natural materials like actual moss and stuff like that, and like different seeds and whatnot. I mean, that's a good idea, and I feel that is something I should look into a little
Oh,
more.
I found it.
I think I have it up here too.
Yes, that's it. It's
Always
mini
that generic looking.
Nature Silipure. I just posted something. I think where I ordered some was from Scenic Express. Sells a lot of it.
And I don't even know if I could. Maybe they're these. I could even find it.
It's the Sil Florets packs of stuff, I think. Maybe.
Oh, here's the thing with like moss pads. Oh, yeah, here we go. And they have if like summer, autumn, winter.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And they have some nice flower ones and things.
Yeah, so these I feel are some of the nicer ones that I've seen and worked with. Um
Yeah, there's a lot of different stuff that it's
yeah.
hard to know exactly what you want.
Yeah, and how well it will actually work. Like I think from them as well, I got these like little grassy pads that have kind of like little leaves and stuff on them. And I've experimented around with them a little bit, but I was never satisfied with what they look like, so I've never actually used them. So I think it's the type of thing you just kind of need to
Yeah.
experiment with it.
Yeah, the moss pads are the ones that I like the most, or those were the ones that were the easiest to just use directly.
Yeah, no, they're
Like,
very good. And if we look at the little crows here, those like little grassy, mossy pads that you see on all of the bases, that's what those are. And they can also kind of work kind of well, like if you have larger areas of a base with them, it can kind of also kind of look like grass, or yeah, just like a forest of moss. Yeah, so they're nice. And they also have they're very random in size and shape. So even if you would just cover a base with a whole series of these, no one is going to necessarily look the same. Whereas like with some of the other like grass tufts and stuff you have, like they have a lot of very same-ish shapes that can kind of look a little stilted.
I feel just the main thing. Most grass tufts that are sold from like gamers grass, things of that nature, most of them are just like 10 times too large.
That's fair.
Actually, look at the scale. Like maybe if you're doing on a really large base, like you could have
hmm
one that's pretty large, but most of it they look way too uniform
hmm
and just so tall and large
Yeah.
that they're not that great looking.
Yeah.
As for hobby stuff, I admit I haven't done much. I guess, which we didn't even mention it, but a bunch of my time was taken up finishing writing the our favorite like or notable hobbyists of last year, which went
hmm
out or over the weekend, I think.
Yeah.
So I'd encourage people to look at that if you haven't. Um, I imagine a lot of our listeners are following a lot of the people on there,
hmm
but it was nice to mention different, some hobbyists, like mention Nikki Grillet, who's kind of recently gone freelance and started to
Yeah.
um, sell some of her artwork and whatnot. And actually, Andrew Ray's on there too.
hmm
Uh, but so there's some good stuff there, and I'm happy that we were able to do that. And then I guess editing that episode of the podcast and stuff. So I guess I haven't had a ton of time to do my own personal hobby stuff, and it's been more sort of blog related writing and things, but maybe that
Yeah.
will start to change a little bit.
And a little bit of playing Root.
Oh yeah, I see the I think the thing that I have been most excited about recently, Greg just mentioned, is playing a strategy board game called Root, which is a game from a small studio called Leader Games that is sort of an asymmetric war game that has a really fun, charming theme, which is like anthropomorphized animals that are fighting one another um, in sort of a medieval fantasy setting.
With brutal combat and treachery.
There is that. Like the artwork suggests that it's something super charming and fun. And while the game is fun, it is not super lighthearted ultimately,
Yeah.
but it's really great. Particularly the art, like all the art was created by the same person. I think his name's Kyle Farron, and just has wonderful artwork, and it has gone.
I linked
I can't
something
easily
in one of our
access that
chats.
stuff. I will try and.
Can you access from the chat in Twitch?
Oh, I could probably do that.
Otherwise, you can type on Google Kyle Ferrin, Ferrin, root.
Oh
Like
yeah, here we
Kyle
go.
Ferrin.
There's a wonderful art that helps get helps get you excited about it, honestly.
Like, look at this little blue jay going
With
on a
bindle.
pilgrimage.
With his bindle.
Yeah. This little lizard holding a skull. He's gonna sacrifice other woodland creatures for his hands.
That's what he's gonna do.
But yeah, it's the game's really fun, like good sort of strategic stuff. But then the artwork is really wonderful, and we started to play it thus far. Been playing a lot of like a Steam version of it, so like a computerized version that's on like phones, iPads, the Switch, and whatnot. And it's a good rendition of it.
Oh my god, here's like a little fucking like I don't know, a cardinal or a robin or something. Looks like he's burning down the forest or some shit.
And there's an expansion that uh adds like better AI for so you could play it solo,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty great because they made like robotical versions of the most of the factions that are cute as well.
Oh yeah, look at them. This robot crow looks particularly menacing.
But like Leader Games, like they work closely with him, and I think he does the art for all of their games, which really helps create a mood and a setting and whatnot.
Mm.
And I recently got a copy of the physical board game, which I hope to be able to play maybe even this week, actually.
Yeah, it's
I don't
nice.
know how easy it is to see, but
It's a nice
the
small box too.
no, it's a really small box that pretty much just fits everything perfectly, as opposed to having tons of empty space to look impressive.
Meandering shade, that means of creating like a moss texture. That's an interesting thought. I might have to look into trying that at one point.
Hmm.
But yeah, so Root's good. I mean, if you have like Tabletop Simulator, I think there's a version of it on there that you can play and whatnot. So it's good. It's fun. Yeah.
It's the most fun I've had in a while, I feel, playing it. It's really quite good. And I feel playing the digital adaptation, it at least as a way to ease yourself into the game, since it's somewhat intimidating due to how each of the different factions you can play has a whole set of different objectives and plays pretty differently.
Mm-hmm.
It is maybe a little hard to learn at first, but once you've played it a little bit, it's all pretty intuitive and not overly complicated. But the digital adaptation at least makes it such that you're not gonna cheat somehow. It prevents you from
Yeah.
cheating. But
But
now that I've played quite a few games digitally, I'm excited to actually play physically because, as Eric mentioned, the production values look really nice.
Yeah, they have these delightful. Each faction has their own meeples
Mm-hmm.
that are shaped to look like all of them. Oh yeah, there's little crows. There's a newer faction of little crows that are terrorists essentially,
Oh my god.
and set traps and stuff.
Well, it's interesting that based on some of the stuff that I've read, like it's clear that the designers have an idea of the kind of world history of these forest creatures and such, and that you can see that play out in a lot of the artwork
Yeah.
to the point that they had a Kickstarter maybe a year ago for a role playing game set in the
Mm-hmm.
root world here that I think could be pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
These little soldier robins. Yeah, so that's
The
cool.
birds are pretty vicious and warlike.
Uh-oh. Bastards. It's just like
The
birds.
lizard cult hates birds.
Okay.
So a fourth of the cards on the deck are birds, so you can't use them to do
Mm-hmm.
their rituals and stuff
Oh,
because they hate birds. uh, yeah, funny.
that's great. Well, so actually, how are people feeling? Do we think we've been chatting on for a while? Do
Yeah,
we? I don't think. I think we can save talking about all the Games Workshop releases and stuff for another stream. I mean, there's a fair amount to
yeah,
talk about, and I don't know if I'm that interested in talking about it. And
yeah. I don't
probably
think it's
saying the
good enough.
same stuff we always say. So
Yeah.
there are some more. The Las Vegas Open tournament and stuff happened recently, and I guess that brought about a fair amount of news and excitement about different things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess we can talk about that next week.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, are people all right with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good to me.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us this evening, and thanks for your comments and whatnot.
Mm.
So hopefully, stay safe, healthy, everybody. Keep on enjoying the hobby, whether that's through like artwork, painting, reading, writing, whatever, blogging,
Yeah.
Instagramming, backing Kickstarters, whatnot. Whatever it is, keep on having fun. And we will talk to you, all of you, again soon.
Yeah.
Until next time,
Yeah,
over and
everybody.
out.